eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He has loosed the faithful lining of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching, marching on. In the beauty of the lily, Christ was born across the sea with the glory in his bosom that transfigures you and me. As he died to make men holy, let us
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please rise for the entrance of our platform party and the posting of our colors? Ladies and gentlemen, our national anthem.
May we pray. Our Father, our Heavenly Father, we come this day with an attitude of gratitude. We are thankful for your magnificent, magnanimous, and munificent blessings that are showered on us day by day. We give thanks for permitting us to come to this special place at this special time for this special celebration. We thank you for the building to be dedicated. But more than that, we thank you for the life of Mrs. Rosa Parks, for whom the building is named. We thank you for the unknown, the unnamed, and the unsung heroes who struggled and suffered during times when hope unborn had died. We thank you for the ministers, some lettered, some unlettered, some even unlearned, who stood in pulpits, marched around the walls of our Jerichos crying to the oppressed, "Walk on, children, don't you get weary. There's a great camp meeting over there." We give thanks for those, many of them of a different hue and heritage than I, who garnered the courage to declare that God has made all of us of one blood and suffered themselves rather than walk in the abomination against the Lord called racism. We thank you for this university, Troy State University, Montgomery, my alma mater, for choosing Dr. Glenda Curry to lead it to a greater level of social diversity, racial sensitivity, and academic excellence. We thank you for her, the one who succeeds her. May your blessings be upon both of them. We give thanks for Miss Elaine Steele, Anita Peak, and all of the management and staff of the Rosa and Raymond Parks Institute for Self-Development. May their unstinting service keep the dream alive throughout this millennium. We give thanks for the congressmen who use their influence to get the financial subsidies required to move this project to finality. Our petition now, Lord, is that you will give us the good sense as we celebrate the struggles of the past to remain cognizant of the potential perils that confront us in this present age. Our prayer is that those who are here this weekend will commit ourselves to ensuring that every citizen of this great state and country will become the beneficiaries of a full measure of freedom. Let us not be slack in our labors, for your word tells us that he who is slack in his work is a brother to him who destroys. Give us a true spirit of partnership, that no man becomes a pawn but a partner in our endeavors to celebrate our past and shape a brighter future for ourselves and our posterity. Help us to reach and teach those who prefer a divided state and nation, some on the left, some on the right, some black, some white, that you are not a respecter of person, but that you have the whole world in your hands. Help us to love as Jesus defined love. Let the ties that bind us remain stronger than the differences that constantly seek to separate us. I'm proud to be black while others are proud to be white. Let us all become humble enough to live to be right. For if we strive to be right, you will surely continue to bless our nation, while giving deference to those who know you in a way different than I, and for even those who know you not at all. Yet I pray in only one name, and in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen. Forgive me. At this time, we want you to please remain standing, and the Reverend Tandra Jones will lead us in one stanza of Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let her rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won.
Please be seated. For those of you who are standing, I see some seats down here if you'd like to come and take those seats. Good afternoon. My name is Cameron Martindale, and I am president of Troy State University Montgomery. It is my pleasure to welcome you and to thank you for coming to be a part of this historic occasion, the dedication of the Rosa Parks Library and Museum. With this building, we have constructed a lasting tribute to a brave woman who 45 years ago on this day, directly across the street, was arrested and made history. Today, we have the opportunity to thank that legend, the mother of the modern-day civil rights movement, for her courage. Robert Greenleaf, who wrote Servant as Leader, observed, "Behind every great achievement is a dreamer of great dreams." We believe Mrs. Parks is a dreamer of great dreams, dreams which in the past enabled her to stand alone in difficult times, dreams which in the future will inspire other courageous individuals. We here at Troy State University, Montgomery want our students and our community to be dreamers of great dreams, which is why this small university began this grand project. And I say thank you for coming here today to begin this journey of dreams. I'm sure you'd like to help me in thanking the Troy State Symphony Band under the direction of Mr. Robert Smith for the beautiful musical prelude to our program today. Our color guard today is from the TSU Air Force ROTC Detachment 17, and the invocation was given by Reverend Joseph Rembrandt Sr., pastor of the St. Paul's AME Church in Montgomery. As you look around, you will see more than 1,000 people who are here today to honor Mrs. Parks, and that's only in this theater. While I cannot introduce everyone, please allow me to say a special welcome to our platform guests. And I ask that you withhold your applause until I have introduced everyone. In our front row is Dr. Juanita Abernathy, civil rights activist and wife of the late Reverend Dr. Ralph Abernathy. Dr. Johnny Carr, MIA president and 5th grade schoolmate of Mrs. Rosa Parks. Dr. Dorothy Height, founder of the National Council of Negro Women. The Honorable Rodney Slater, Secretary of the U.S. Department of Transportation. The Honorable Jeff Sessions, United States Senator from Alabama. Dr. Jack Hawkins, Jr., Chancellor of the Troy State University System. The Honorable Don Siegelman, Governor of the State of Alabama and President of the Board of Trustees of Troy State University System. The Honorable Bobby Bright, Mayor of the City of Montgomery. Dr. Coretta Scott King, founder of the Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolence and Social Change. Dr. Evelyn Lowry, founder of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference of Women. And Dr. Mamie Till Mobley, mother of the late Emmett Till, who was killed in Money, Mississippi, which sparked international public attention to racial injustice in America. On the second row, beginning here, Mr. Martin Luther King III, President, Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Mr. Roy Drinkard, these are members of my Board of Trustees. Mr. Roy Drinkard, Coleman County. Mayor John Harrison, Laverne. Mr. Lamar Higgins, Huntsville. Mr. Milton McGregor, Montgomery. And Mr. Alan Owen, Opelika. Dr. Doug Hawkins, Troy, President Pro Tem of our board. Senator Gerald Dial, Lineville, Vice President Pro Tem of our board. And Dr. Douglas Patterson, Vice Chancellor of the Troy State University System. Dr. Glenda Curry, Second President of Troy State University, Montgomery. And Reverend Joseph Rembrandt Sr., pastor of Mrs. Parks Montgomery Church, and in our audience, the First Lady of the Troy State University System, Mrs. Janice Hawkins. Would you please stand so we can see you? Please applause with me. We have some very special guests that have traveled many miles to share this tribute with Mrs. Parks. Please stand as I call your name. And ladies and gentlemen, I ask again that you hold your applause until all have been recognized. The internationally acclaimed Academy Award recipient and friend of Mrs. Parks, Miss Cicely Tyson. And let me continue. U.S. Representative from Michigan, Congressman John Conyers, employer of Dr. Rosa Parks for 25 years. Mrs. Benjamin Hook. Board of Directors of the Rosa and Raymond Parks Institute. Would you please stand? The family of Dr. Rosa Parks. If you would please stand. Reverend Eddie Robinson. Reverend Ernest Garrison. The National Council of Negro Women. And Mr. Morris Dees. Please now join me in a large applause for these wonderful guests. It is now my honor to introduce Dr. Jack Hawkins, Jr., Chancellor of the Troy State University System, who has been so supportive of this project and always of our university. Dr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Dr. Martindale. On behalf of the Troy State University System Board of Trustees, it's my honor to bring you greetings on this wonderful, wonderful day of celebration. Indeed, this is the day that the Lord hath made. The Apostle John said, if anyone says, I love God, yet hates his brother, he is a liar. Whoever loves God must also love his brother. Today we honor a person whose actions produced sweeping social change and in the process helped us to follow the command that was so forcefully written in the book of John. But freedom is not free. Social change would not have been possible without the sacrifices of pioneers such as Ms. Rosa Parks. Ms. Parks became the embodiment of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s philosophy of nonviolent civil disobedience. And those among us who witnessed the turbulent decades of the 50s and 60s must agree that leaders such as Dr. King and Ms. Parks not only influenced a better world, their nonviolent philosophy prevented widespread bloodshed on the streets of America. The world we live in today is remarkably different from the world we experienced some 45 years ago. On the very street where Mrs. Parks took her stand for freedom and equality, Alabamians of all races now strive for a university education and a better way of life. Troy State University's role in the change began in the 1950s when we responded to a call from the United States military to provide classes for a racially integrated military force at a time when racial segregation was a way of life in Alabama. This was not a barrier for Troy State University. The university began offering courses to the military, first at Fort Rucker, located near Dothan, Alabama, and in the early 1960s, we began to offer courses at Maxwell Air Force Base here in Montgomery. Today, Troy State University is a worldwide institution with campuses on more than 50 military bases in 14 U.S. states and in 6 nations around the globe. And at the site at Maxwell Air Force Base, we've seen a transformation as it has moved from Maxwell to this special place where we gather today, known as Troy State University, Montgomery. Today, the enrollment of TSUM is composed of 43% of African American students, and I might say most of those students are African American women. On the mother campus of Troy State University, which lies 45 miles southeast, 21% of our students are African American, and they study with students from 52 foreign countries. So you could say that all of these students are riding their own bus of change into the future. Thus, we think that it's very proper that the Board of Trustees of Troy State University dedicate, in Mrs. Parks' honor, the beautiful facility which lies just across the street. As we do so, we celebrate the renaissance which has occurred in downtown Montgomery during recent years, as squalor has been replaced by new buildings, and old buildings have been revitalized through renovation. I'm very proud that Troy State University Montgomery has been a leader in the revitalization effort in this city, and I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our Board of Trustees for their support, particularly the Honorable Lamar Higgins for his leadership. I'd also thank Dr. Doug Patterson for helping us craft a plan to pay for all of this, and Dr. Glenda Curry for her vision and her leadership. We miss her. She's been replaced, though, by a former colleague who is doing an extraordinary job in the form of Dr. Cam Martindale. And I want to thank Dr. Martindale and her executive assistant, Sandy Gouge, and the entire staff at Troy State University Montgomery for their dedication and their hard work as a new campus has unfolded through the acquisition of land and a new building has risen from the ashes. That new building will not be a static monument. It will be a vibrant place for learning and discourse. The late journalist Carl Rowan, who was honored for his courage and coverage of the civil rights movement, said, "The library is a temple of learning, and learning has liberated far more people than all the wars in history." Ladies and gentlemen, that's the essence of a great university's mission, to liberate through learning. 45 years ago, Rosa Parks helped us learn about tolerance, and she taught us about fairness, and she taught us how to love. The Rosa Parks Library and Museum will make sure that these important lessons will continue to be taught for decades to come. Truly, Ms. Parks honors us by allowing us to honor her. It's now my honor to introduce to you a gentleman I refer often as a Renaissance man. He's a man of letters, he's a man of vision, he's a family man, and he's a great leader. But Don Sigelman is more than that. Governor Don Sigelman is governor of all the people of Alabama. Governor Sigelman often says, Alabama has turned the corner and is headed in the right direction. We believe that today's dedication is evidence that indeed we have much to be proud of in this great state we call home. And our pride in Alabama starts at the very top and reflects our pride in our governor. Please join me in welcoming the governor of the great state of Alabama, the Honorable Don Sigelman.
Well, thank you so much, and it's a special privilege to welcome each of you. On behalf of the people of Alabama, a special welcome to Mrs. Carr and Mrs. Abernathy and Mrs. King and Yolanda King and Martin Luther King Jr., Mrs. Steele, Dr. Steele. Thank you so much for joining us. On this day, in 1955, a single, solitary African-American woman refused to give up her rightful place on a city bus. On that day, Montgomery labor leader E.D. Nixon called the pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and said, "Lead us." Within days, the Montgomery bus boycott had begun. And in 1956, the segregated public bus system was declared unconstitutional by the United States Supreme Court. The bus boycott was only the beginning, an early episode in the civil rights movement and in the changing of our nation and the changing of the world. Rosa Parks, with her body tired from work, but her heart filled with courage, stared down injustice that day. And just as the young boy David stood before the Philistine giant, Rosa Parks placed her life in the hands of her God, and fear was replaced with strength and courage and the hope of equality for all. And from that day forward, the first of many giants would fall. Her undaunted action built a strong foundation of faith. The history and the pictures show a young woman sitting firmly, single-handedly taking on inequality and injustice. Throughout her undignified arrest that day, this petite lady never lost her composure. She never swayed. Rosa Parks followed her heart. She never backed down to the humiliation and the hatred which was the backdrop of that day. Instead, Rosa Parks, with her heart filled with faith, made her courageous stand, providing the inspiration for the next 381 days and lighting an eternal torch of equality for all. Yes, one might say life might have been easier for Rosa Parks if she had just moved from her seat to the back of the bus. But instead, on that day, she chose a path no one had dared to take. As Robert Frost said, she took a road less traveled, and that has made all the difference. Mrs. Parks' brave action 45 years ago inspired not only Alabamians and Americans, but also people thirsting for freedom throughout the world. And the torch of equality that she lit for dignity and humanity still burns brightly today in America, throughout the world, and in her home, Alabama. As governor, I'm proud today to announce the creation of the Governor's Medal of Honor for Extraordinary Courage. And just moments before I came on stage, I had the honor and privilege of presenting the first medal to Ms. Parks. I can think of no one who has demonstrated more individual courage or willingness to stand up for what's right than Mrs. Parks. And I was proud to name her as the first recipient of this award. As governor, I'm proud to welcome Mrs. Parks on behalf of the people of Alabama for her extraordinary act of courage 45 years ago, an act that changed this state, changed this nation, and changed the world forever. Mrs. Parks, welcome home.
Thank you, Governor Sigelman. One of the most important things I do as president of TSUM is to say thank you to all the wonderful people who help us accomplish our mission as a university. Sometimes I have the pleasure of doing this individually, and sometimes I have the opportunity to say it as a group. Today, I am overwhelmed with the need to say thank you to so many people who have shared our dreams for a wonderful library and museum to honor Mrs. Parks. Let me begin by saying thank you to our Chancellor Jack Hawkins and to the Troy State University Board of Trustees for their vision and support of this library and museum, and for the far-reaching effect it will have on our students, our community, and our state. During the early days of this project, Mr. Lamar Higgins and Reverend Joe Rembrandt were the first to step forward to help us communicate our plans to Mrs. Parks. They have stayed with us in this project, and we are indeed grateful. We have also had a strong museum advisory board to guide and encourage us, and I would like to call their names and ask them to stand so we may thank them for their wonderful, wonderful work. The Honorable Bobby Bright, Mr. Fred Burton, Dr. Johnny Carr, Dr. Glenda Curry, Mr. Willis Edwards, Mr. Jim Ferrier, Mr. Fred Gray, Chancellor Jack Hawkins, Mr. Lamar Higgins, Miss H.H. Leonards, Dr. Douglas Patterson, Mr. Greg Reed, Miss Elaine Eason Steele, and Mr. Alvin Williamson. Would you please give them a hand? Thank you so much. I would also like to recognize the Montgomery Improvement Association. Please let me thank you one more time for the beautiful city bus that was so wonderfully renovated by Alabama Power Foundation. It is a central artifact in our museum, and we also appreciate your assistance in helping us gather oral histories that are such an important part of our museum story. Other important partners in our project include Mr. Roland Vaughn and Sherlock Smith & Adams, who designed our beautiful building. Bear Construction Company, our general contractor for the library and museum. Eisterhold and Associates, who designed the museum with the assistance of the following historians: Dr. J. Mills Thornton, Dr. Robert Pratt, Dr. Ray Arsenault, Dr. James Horton, and Dr. Spencer Crew. And Superior Designs and Exhibits, our museum exhibit fabricators. Permanent sculptures were created for the museum by Miss Artis Lane, who designed the Congressional Gold Medal of Mrs. Parks, and Eric Blome, who sculpted the larger-than-life statue of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and the pictorial quilts in the exhibit room are by Yvonne Wells of Tuscaloosa. We would also like to offer a special thanks to State Farm Insurance Companies for their continued support of this project. Thank you all so very much. And please allow me a personal thank you to the TSUM family, and I know that Dr. Glenda Curry would join me in these words, and especially to Mr. Ray White, Project Officer for the Library and Museum, and Miss Julia Wilson for their endless hours and deep devotion to this effort. Now, the Troy State University Gospel Choir, directed by Mr. Stephen M. Langford, will perform "My Soul's Been Anchored in the Lord."
Do you love him? seven?
Oh yes.
God Almighty,
Are you anchored?
are you anchored?
Oh yes.
Yes, I'm anchored. My soul's been anchored in the Lord.
Yes. Will you serve him?
Will you serve him?
Oh yes.
Will you serve him?
Hallelujah.
Will you serve him?
Oh yes.
God Almighty,
Are you anchored?
are you anchored?
Oh yes.
Yes, I'm
Yes.
anchored. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. Hallelujah.
Will you praise him?
Will you praise him?
Oh yes.
Will you praise him?
Hallelujah.
Will you praise him?
Oh yes.
God Almighty,
Are you anchored?
yes, I'm anchored.
Lord, I'm anchored.
Oh, yes.
Lord, I love you.
Oh, yes.
Yes, I'll serve you.
Oh, yes.
Lord, I'll praise you.
Oh, yes.
Hallelujah.
My soul's been anchored in the Lord.
God Almighty, my been anchored. Anchored in the Lord.
Thank you, Gospel Choir. How wonderful. Oftentimes, the most difficult part of accomplishing a project like the Rosa Parks Library and Museum is finding the funding to support your efforts. This project has been doubly blessed by having the support of both Alabama senators, Senator Jeff Sessions and Senator Richard Shelby. They have worked tirelessly over the last 2 years to secure funding for this project, and I cannot adequately thank them for what they mean to us. This project would not be possible without the full support of Senator Shelby and Senator Sessions. And we are so pleased that Senator Sessions is with us today. And as I ask him to come forward to say a few words, would you please help me thank him for what he means to us?
Thank you very much, Dr. Martindale and Dr. Hawkins and Dr. Curry, for your vision that started this out a number of years ago, and all of you at Troy State University for making this day possible. It's an important program. I will try to be brief. Senators are known for filibusters. I won't give you one today. But it was a number of years ago, 45 years ago, that an event occurred here of significance. It was not a itty-bitty event. It was a very big event in the history of this state and this nation. It raised to the world and all Alabamians, particularly white Alabamians, a reality that we would preferred not to think about. How could one defend in the public before the world a practice that required an honest, hard-working citizen who paid her bus ticket to go to the back of the bus, simply on account of her color? Thus, on that day, the moral foundations of segregation were broken, and other injustices, year after year, month after month, began to be eliminated around this country. Rosa Parks is indeed rightly called the mother of the civil rights movement. I was particularly pleased, therefore, last year to sponsor the Congressional Gold Medal resolution in the Senate to honor her and to be in the rotunda of the Capitol when President Clinton presented her with that august medal that given to so few people in this country. And so it's particularly also a pleasure to me to work with Senator Shelby and other members of this delegation and Secretary Slater. who has served very ably in this administration as the Cabinet Secretary of Transportation, and I've had occasion to work with him over the years and come to respect him greatly. And I know he personally cares about what is occurring here and supported it in so many different ways. Rosa Parks' act and the act of those who worked with her was a catalytic event. And as I said on the floor of the Senate, it was a spark that caused a nation to stop accepting things as they had been and focused everyone on the fundamental issue, whether we could continue as a segregated society. After much courage and effort by so many of you here, the answer to that has been a firm no. Attorney Fred Gray, who I see in the crowd, was involved in those early days, every aspect of the effort of the bus boycott and the legal efforts that occurred afterward. He summed that up in his book, Bus Ride to Justice, in words that I do not believe are an exaggeration in this way. Little did we know that we had set in motion a force that would ripple through Alabama, the South, and the nation, and even the world. But from that vantage point of almost 40 years later, there is a direct correlation between what we started in Montgomery and what has subsequently happened in China, Eastern Europe, South Africa, and even more recently in Russia. While it is inaccurate to say we all sat down and deliberately planned a movement that would echo and reverberate around the world, we did work around the clock, planning strategy, creating an atmosphere that gave strength, courage, faith, and hope to people of all races, creeds, colors, and religions around the world. And it started on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama, with Rosa Parks on December 1st, 1955. Fred, I think that sums it up very well. I am honored to be with you today. God bless you all.
Thank you, Senator Sessions. It is now my honor to introduce the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Transportation, the Honorable Rodney E. Slater. He has been a strong supporter of our museum since its inception, and we are so delighted he could be with us today.
President Martindale, Chancellor Hawkins, members of the Board of Trustees of Troy State University, who could have imagined on this day 45 years ago that something special would begin in a small and single act of courage that would give fire and lift to a movement that would literally change the course of America and the world, and that 45 years later, to the day, a governor, a senator, a congressman, yes, the legacy of Rosa Parks, it sits there alongside those who helped to found this great nation of freedom. It is there alongside those who have used transportation to demonstrate that it's about more than concrete, asphalt, and steel. It is there alongside the spirit of Harriet Tubman, who used the Underground Railroad to take her people to freedom. It is there, alongside the commitment of Homer Plessy, who sat and fought for the right to sit any place on a train. It is there, alongside the work of the Freedom Riders, who moved throughout the South to continue to bring down the walls and build the bridges. And yes, it is there, in the spirit of those who walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge and traveled along US 80 from Selma to Montgomery to gain for all the right to vote. It is also fitting that the Rosa Parks Library and Museum finds its home here, President Martindale, on the campus of Troy State University, Montgomery. For as the Greek poet and philosopher Epictetus wisely said more than 20 centuries ago, only the educated are truly free. So let us then, in the spirit of Rosa Parks and in the words of Galatians, let us then not grow weary in doing good. For in due season we shall surely reap if we do not lose heart. And let us use transportation as she used it, to literally run and not grow weary, to walk and not faint, to literally mount up on wings of eagles and fly.
Thank you, Secretary Slater, for your wonderful words of encouragement. As a way to introduce you to the Mayor of Montgomery, let me say that when you visit the museum, and you will, right? You will see amazing artifacts that have been provided to TSUM by the City of Montgomery. You should also note that Mayor Bobby Bright serves on our Museum Advisory Board. During my very first visit with Mayor Bright after his election, he expressed a strong desire to be a part of this project, and throughout this year, he helped us every time we needed him. It is always my pleasure to introduce the Mayor of the City of Montgomery, the Honorable Bobby Bright.
Thank you so much, Dr. Martindale. I tell you, it's a pleasure to be here. And you know, as mayor of this great city, this is really, really a historic occasion. And it really just pricks my heart to see what we are doing here, see the people, look out over the congregation, as the preacher would say, and see a meshing of our citizens, and black and white, rich and poor, young and old. It's wonderful. That's what the world is all about, and that's what we're all about here in the city of Montgomery. You know, it's a historic day today. 45 years ago tonight, or today, right here in Montgomery, right across the street, a remarkable lady riding on a bus began a remarkable journey not only for the city of Montgomery, but for the entire nation and the entire world. Her action that December day was in itself a simple one, but it required uncommon courage, and its effect rippled through this nation, touching the lives of every single American. She brought great courage and great change, not because she possessed influence or wealth, but because she possessed courage and character. She is a woman of quiet courage who embraces dignity and humility each day of her life. And you know, as I was trying to come up with the words that I could use here today to really describe Miss Rosa Parks, I think quiet courage was what stands out, and it's a great description of her and her actions. And those words ring throughout this community, and I hope throughout the world. Grave, quiet courage for what she has done. You know, recently as mayor, I had the opportunity to get and I'm mayor 1 year last week, matter of fact, and so I'm awfully new on the job. But I do realize the significance of what we're doing here. I've realized it for many, many years ahead of me becoming mayor. And I'm blessed, awfully blessed, to be able to say that I am the mayor of this great city where Rosa Parks made the move that she made, and so many other people here helped start the movement that we have witnessed throughout the years. Recently, as mayor, I had the opportunity to get a meaningful lesson about the movement during the 1950s here in the city of Montgomery, Alabama. Soon after taking office as mayor, our police chief passed on to me a large box of official police documents that had been put away for all these years. I spent many hours, and my wife, bless her, she spent many hours also. I won't ever forget one night she went through these records, and I was out doing my mayor duties and came home late one night about 11 o'clock, and she was sitting up in the middle of the bed. She was going through these documents, and she was so excited, and her eyes were as big as saucers, and she said, Bobby, come here, come here. She was so excited about what she was seeing and witnessing there in our house, in our bedroom, with these documents that were furnished to me. I spent many hours after she brought it to my attention reviewing them, and I will never forget the emotions I felt, along with my wife's emotions, as the full story unfolded in the daily police reports, the inter-office memos, the letters, including a letter from Dr. Martin Luther King to the police chief of the city of Montgomery. Ms. Parks's fingerprint cards and many other documents were described among those historic documents which describe those historic days here in the city of Montgomery. Those items have been turned over, as Dr. Martindale said, to the TSUM Rosa Parks Library Museum. And let me tell you, those items brought emotional moments to me and to my wife. And as I was going through those documents, I realized that we've got so many people, not only here in our city, but throughout the nation, that need to experience those same emotions by reviewing those documents, reading that personal letter from Dr. King to our police chief here in the city of Montgomery. And that letter is over there with his original signature, and it tells how he anticipated his movement and how the movement was a nonviolent movement, one for all the people of the nation, not just for a segment of the people of the nation. And I made a determination at that point in time that these documents have to be revealed to the public so that each and every one who visit the museum will see those documents and read those documents and have the same emotions and the same feelings that I experienced. So they are there, and I encourage you to go there and read these documents and get the same feeling. This is a great day for the city of Montgomery. The Rosa Parks Library Museum will draw visitors from all over the world. We can celebrate our history and share it with others. Montgomery has a colorful history. It has a great history, and this is one of the most outstanding ways that we can share our history with the world and with the nation, letting them know what happened here 45 years ago. You know, the governor had an opportunity to give Ms. Parks an award. And as mayor of the city of Montgomery, I have the right to proclamate. And I do a lot of proclamating, but I try to be very select in any type of proclamation that I issue because it can have some effects here or there negative, and I've experienced both positive and negative. But I will tonight, and I'm announcing it today, I will proclamate today, December the 1st, as Rosa Parks Day in the city of Montgomery, and I will be delivering to her that nicely framed proclamation to her tonight, along with a couple of other honorary gifts to her and to a couple of other people at the gala. So I encourage each one of you to participate, not only here today, and in the ribbon cutting, but the other activities that we've got scheduled throughout the city, not only today, but tomorrow and Sunday and Monday also. This is an annual event. This is an everyday event that you can participate in by coming downtown Montgomery and touring the museum. I want to say one thing, and that is thank you, Ms. Parks, for your character, for your courage, and without that, we wouldn't be here today. So thank you so very much.
Thank you, Mayor Bright. Oftentimes it is the praise of those who know us best that means the most. It is our kindred spirits who have held our hands during the most difficult times in our lives who best understand our experiences. For this reason, we have invited several very special women of the civil rights movement to offer their tributes to Mrs. Parks. Now giving their tributes in alphabetical order are the following women of the movement: Dr. Juanita Abernathy, Dr. Johnny May Carr, Dr. Dorothy Height, Dr. Coretta Scott King, Dr. Evelyn Lowry, and Dr. Mamie Till Mobley. Dr. Abernathy?
Thank you, President Martindale, Governor Siegelman, Mayor Bright, Senator Sessions, the Honorable Rodney Slater, and other members of the dais. I won't call any more names for fear I miss someone. It is indeed an honor and a privilege to have the opportunity to speak a few words for one of the giants of our movement. And I want to thank you as a university for having the courage to recognize this giant. We all know the story of the Montgomery bus boycott. You've heard it many, many times. You know the story of Rosa Parks. But let me tell you, she was gentle. She is gentle, kind, loving, sweet, demure, hardworking, and a civic-minded individual. All of these things went into play when Rosa Parks sat down. Rosa sitting down and deciding not to move one more step backwards caused the nation and the world to move steps forward. Her steadfastness, her determination, all was a motivating force to force America to really be America for all. You see, back in those days, there was an imaginary line on the buses. Some of you are too young to know. But the decision on where one would sit was left primarily to the bus drivers. And I want to say, Mayor Bright, the buses are fabulous looking today. We think they were decorated for our benefit. And they even look old like the buses did back then. They've got a Christmas wreath on the front, and they are shining to perfection. Thank you. We realize that was not an accident. But Rosa was sitting in what was called the black section. A tired, gentle, kind, sweet, compassionate woman. And very often the only seat blacks had on the bus at that time, if whites got on and filled up the bus, was the long seat across the rear. And Rosa decided that she would not move backward any further. And what I like to think is Rosa threw a pebble in a great pond that day that made a ripple effect causing tidal waves around the world, as far away as the Aborigines in Australia and our brothers and sisters in South Africa. But the effort of one soul who decided not to move back any further brought America forward. And I have come today to say, thank you, Rosa, for sitting so that we could be today in Troy State University, where many of us couldn't have even imagined many years ago of even entering these doors. And thank you, Rosa, for bringing us this far, for igniting the candle and the conscience of America that she should be America for all. Thank you.
After all of our people on the dais have been named, I don't think it's proper to call names, but with respect and honor to all of the persons who are on the dais today, because they are here because of certain reasons or whatever, I do want to say I'm glad to see every one of you who are present here today. And to every one of you who are in the audience today, I want to say to you, I'm very happy to see each of you here today. Rosa Louise Macaulay Parks, I'm happy to see you here today. We would not have thought it, Rosa and I, when we were playing together on the school ground at the Montgomery Industrial School back in 1925, 26, and 27, that today we would be in this audience. And she would be being honored for a step that she took in 1955. So today, as we come to this part, I just want to say to Rosa, thank you for the step that you took at the time that you took it, because it was time for somebody to take a step. Who would have thought it, that it would have been Rosa, that quiet, unassuming, sweet little Rosa Parks. God blessed her soul. Rosa was not so much physically tired from a day's work as she was tired of the treatment that our people had gone through. And in order for us to be able to really appreciate the act that Rosa did, we would have to know something about the suffering, the humiliation, and all of the things that we had gone through. And it was just time. God ordained that it was time for somebody to stand up, somebody to do something. And so it was in the person of Rosa Parks that this came about. I'm happy to say this afternoon that I am happy that I was a part of knowing Rosa a long time before this happened. But we had worked together in the NAACP, and after we had gotten to be grown women and gone about our various ways with our families and things, got back together. And we worked in the community, and we saw so many things that happened that nothing was really done about it. But today, we can look around when we see we have some of our people who are in the legislature, in the public offices and whatever. We have somebody to speak for us. And it didn't happen accidentally. It happened because of the act of Rosa Parks and others who came together to fight that big, ugly monster segregation and discrimination. So today, as we come here, we are thankful to this institution and to the leadership here for what they have done. This will be a monument for our people, for people of all the world to come here to see this, and they will know the history of what happened. Many times when I speak, I use the word, you have to know your history. You will have to know where you came from. in order to be able to appreciate where you are today, and then be able to forge forward for what you would like to see your world to be on tomorrow. So history is very important, and we are happy that this will be a part of history of Montgomery. So to say to each of you today, don't let this celebration stop here, but let it move forward, that we will see better days in the future. I have said many times, and this is true, go into the forest and look at the biggest oak tree you can see. And once that was a little acorn, but today it is a great oak. 1955, this was a little acorn, but today it is a giant oak. And I'm happy to say that I am a part of it. I was there then, and I'm here now. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
To have the opportunity to pay tribute is great. To do it in the presence of so many people is so meaningful. Madam President, Mr. Chancellor, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Secretary, my dear Mayor, its friends in the movement, I'm glad to be here. Just to think about the quiet strength, the courage, and dignity of Rosa Parks makes me proud to be an African American woman. Rosa Parks, shortly after the boycott had come to its conclusion, and we all had begun to see new ways that we could begin to move, was in a meeting of a small group of people, and I'll never forget it, because she said, so many people speak about my coming home that evening and being tired. And she said, I wasn't tireder than I usually am. But she said, I was tired of the way we were treated. I wasn't part of the movement. I grew up in the North. But when she described the way the system worked, the fact that even, as Mrs. Abernathy has said, there was this magic line that was there, that always had to be regarded. But the fact that one had to pay the bus driver and then go off the bus to the back of the bus, and all of that created a humility that she was tired of. But she didn't stop in a negative way. She went on to say to us that she had been at a worship service at Mount Eagle, Tennessee, in a retreat. And she said every day there was a person who led the service. And each day the message came through, you are a child of God. You can make a difference. And Mrs. Parks said, I sat there on the bus, and as the bus driver began to harass me, as he usually did with others, she said, it was as if I could hear a small voice saying to me, Rosa Parks, you're a child of God. You can make a difference. And she sat down so that we can stand up with more dignity and with greater respect. That made a great impact on me and my life, because I came to understand what it means when one is deeply rooted in faith and expresses it in a significant way. And so today, as I pay tribute on behalf of so many women who would have words that they would want to say, pay tribute to Rosa Parks and the millions of women whose names may never be known, who led us to where we are today. I do so humbly and with gratitude for the opportunity. Mary McLeod Bethune, who was the founder of the National Council of Negro Women, always talked about the importance that we had of coming together, of learning to work with unity, not uniformity, but respecting our differences and working in unity. And I think that I join with all whose thanks to our senators and to all at Troy State who will help us institutionalize Rosa Parks' experience in a way that will help us understand how each of us every day can and should make a difference. And you'll remember Dr. King put it this way when he said, we need each other. We need to learn how to work together and how to respect each other. And he always said, the black man needs the white man to free him of his fear. And the white man needs the black man to free him of his guilt. If we come together realizing how much we need each other, if we can act in the spirit of the nonviolent movement, if we can somehow be stirred by the kind of courage that Rosa Parks showed, we can make a difference. We'll make a difference until we not only have the freedoms that we have now, the laws that we have now, but we will move on until we have a society in which there is not only law and order, but equality and justice for all.
To President Martindale, to Senator Sessions, to Mayor Bright, Troy State Chancellor Jack Hawkins Jr., Dr. Dorothy Height, Ms. Johnny Carr, Juanita Abernathy, Ms. Mamie Teal Mobley, to all of the distinguished program participants and guests in this audience today, it's a great honor and privilege for me to join you in celebrating the grand opening of the Rosa Parks Library and Museum. History teaches us that all great freedom movements began with an inspiring act of courage. And in this regard, the American Civil Rights Movement provides a supreme example. The library and museum we dedicate today is a living testament to the courage, commitment, and character of the great woman whose act of courage sparked our freedom struggle, the woman we call Mrs. Rosa Louise Parks. In her extraordinary courage and humility, Mrs. Rosa Parks provided our movement with a matchless example of the very spirit of nonviolence. Her strength and unshakable determination, her calm, deeply felt faith, and pragmatic approach to social justice all added immeasurable credibility to our nonviolent movement. As my husband, Martin Luther King Jr. wrote, Mrs. Parks' refusal to cooperate with racism on that historic day was based on her personal sense of dignity and self-respect. By the accumulated indignities of the days gone by and the boundless aspirations of generations yet unborn. Surely, Mrs. Rosa Parks was sent to us by God because few others were so well prepared to play such a momentous role in history. On that fateful day of days, 45 years ago, just across the street, in the very spot where the library and museum that bears her name now stands, the bus driver picked on one of the most admired and respected women of Montgomery. In a city full of extraordinary African American women, the rhetoric of American democracy finally had its day of reckoning with God's justice in the person of Rosa Parks, and by the sheer force of her will, she set in motion a revolution that continues to reverberate in nation after nation and remains an inspiration to human liberation movements everywhere. And now we have a beautiful place where freedom and justice-loving pilgrims from all around the world can come and be educated, uplifted, and inspired by her wonderful life and legacy. And I must thank the Montgomery Improvement Association and Troy State University, Montgomery, for providing the tireless leadership that made this wonderful facility a reality. And so on this 45th anniversary of her heroic act of nonviolent resistance, we dedicate this unique library and museum with deepest respect, appreciation, and love for one of the nation's greatest freedom fighters, Mrs. Rosa Louise Parks. We dedicate this museum and library not so much as a monument to the past, but as an invaluable resource for students and for the civil and human rights struggles of our times. And for coming generations, we pledge to honor Mrs. Rosa Parks with our unflagging dedication to use this library and museum as a resource to help end racism in spirit and in deed through nonviolence, education, and action. With this faith and this commitment, the dream will surely become a radiant reality. Thank you, and God bless you all.
To all of our honorable dignitaries, our dais guests, my sisters of the movement, and my friends. It is not possible to think of you, Mrs. Parks, without thinking of your dignity, your self-respect, your warmth, and that beautiful, radiant smile. But most of all, I think of your strength, your courage, your commitment to justice. And it's been said that still waters run deep. The world will always remember your quiet yet dynamic refusal to compromise your dignity on that bus, thus setting off a movement which changed the world. And I want to thank you, Mrs. Parks, for not stopping there. For your legacy will include leading and educating young people about their heritage and inspiring them to become future leaders and citizens through your innovative Rosa Parks Institute. You have provided the foundation for freedom and liberation for all of us, and we proudly hail you as the mother icon and shero of the movement. For it was after you sat down that Montgomery could find a young minister, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., to stand up and inspire and walk and mobilize a movement for justice. We love you and God bless, and I must close in the spirit of Mrs. Parks, and as my husband says, let's turn to each other and not on each other. Thank you.
greetings to each and every one of you. I am certainly, I'm full today because not only am I celebrating in my heart the contribution that Mrs. Parks has made to each and every one of us, but I'm thinking about how things were and how they are now. I'm thinking what could have been and what is. You see, when Mrs. Parks stood up, I'm sorry, when she sat down, in reality, she was standing up. She was standing for the best in the American dream, taking the whole nation back to those great wells of democracy, which were dug, but not dug deeply enough, by the founding fathers and those who wrote the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. When she sat down, she was letting all of us know that victory is not necessarily given to the strong, that the race is not given to the swift. You see how I crept up here. But you see, I've been running a long time. And when the order comes to go, all I want to know, yes, I'll go. I do have to find somebody to take me, but I'm willing to begin the search. Just a few days ago, before this call came, I fell. I was on the floor 18 hours without help. But I knew I had to get up, and finally I worked out a way. This hand was afflicted with gout. I couldn't put any pressure on it. I had fallen previously, and I don't know what I did to this right shoulder, but it hurts now. But I knew that I had some packing to do, and I knew that I had to get it done. And after 15 hours, the solution came. I had to scoot because I couldn't use my arms. And it took a lot of scooting to get from my bedroom to the kitchen. And when I got to the kitchen, oh, I'm home free now. But it took me 3 hours to go 8 feet. But I had a purpose in mind. I had something to do. I'm going to have to go somewhere. And God gave me the ability to persevere and make the journey. You might wonder why we keep telling this story over and over again. Everybody knows the Rosa Parks story. But I dare us to stop telling it. If we stop, it's going to be forgotten. So I say, just as Rosa kept sitting, somebody started walking. Somebody stopped riding. Somebody got up and said, we know a power greater than this one here on earth. We're willing to suffer so that we can reign. So I'm saying to everyone today, I'm looking in the audience, I can't see too good, but I'm a little worried that I don't see a lot of children They should be here. If we will take them by the hand, and if we will march them in the way that is right, do you know that we can stop this drug movement? Do you know we can? Well, I have a time limit, but I'm telling you, I could preach a sermon today about our youth. And what Rosa Parks, and please allow me to call her that because she's a friend of mine, what she has done for the youth of the various states that she has worked in and through is something that these children will never forget. I won't forget her because she slept in my house. And she had to climb over suitcases and boxes. And I said, oh no, I needed to call in a demolition squad. But she said, that's no problem. We'll just step over this and all we want is a bed. And I am so glad. That is my Rosa Parks slept here room. And I want you to know I kind of got it cleaned up a little. Hoping and praying that another stalwart soldier will come by and need that bed. It's always ready. God bless you all.
Where'd you bring the skirt for? You didn't need that.
Thank you all for those wonderful, inspiring remarks. I feel so blessed that I'm here today and I could hear them. Don't you feel that way? Now I have a surprise for you. Miss Cicely Tyson, who you may have noted joined us on stage, is going to bring a special tribute to Mrs. Parks.
Good afternoon. Honorable dignitaries all, invited guests, when I received an invitation to this event, it came with a message from Mrs. Parks, who said, "You don't have to do anything. I just want your presence." And I fought not to do anything. Yet, here I am, and grateful to do so. I especially want to thank the officials of Troy University for providing us and the future with a museum and library in the name of Rosa Parks, especially for doing it while she is still here. As I sat listening to the speakers, particularly the sisters of Rosa Parks, I became overwhelmed with emotion And I know why it isn't possible for me to speak extemporaneously, because I become too emotional. I thought of all the things that Rosa Parks has gone through in her life, and yet she could say, I didn't insist on sitting down because I was physically tired. I insisted on sitting down because I was tired of the way we were being treated. Well, when I think about myself, I laugh myself to death. My life has been one great big joke. A dance that's walked, a song that spoke. I laugh so hard I almost choke when I think about myself. 60 years in these folks' world, the child I worked for calls me girl. I said, yes, ma'am, for working's sake. Too proud to bend, too poor to break. I laugh until my stomach aches when I think about myself. For I've known rivers. I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood in human veins. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. I bathed in the Euphrates when dawns were young. I built my hut near the
to our children. Once upon a time, there was a visionary president at TSUM who had an idea that seemed far grander than our resources or expertise. But as it is with all things that are the right thing to do, she had the enthusiasm to make us believe it was possible. Her name is Glenda Curry. She is on stage with us today. Please stand, Dr. Curry, and let us show your appreciation. Not long after TSUM purchased the corner of Moulton and Montgomery Street, with thoughts of building a parking deck for our students, we began to notice people taking pictures in front of the city's historical marker that had been recently placed on the property. The marker commemorated Mrs. Parks' arrest in the Montgomery bus boycott. And I remember President Curry's concern that families were leaving the site with very little information about Mrs. Parks and the Montgomery bus boycott. So I was not surprised when she came into my office one day and said, we cannot build a parking deck on that historic site. We must build a library and museum to honor Mrs. Parks. That was the beginning of a 4-year journey that brings us to today. And there are many wonderful memories for our university associated with this journey. I remember the cold December night when Mrs. Parks came to Montgomery and had dinner with a few of us for the first time. It was right before Christmas. Those present know what it feels like to touch history. We were inspired and in awe of Mrs. Parks. Then in April 1998, many of you were here for the groundbreaking of this building named in honor of Mrs. Parks. I remember after the ceremony, Mrs. Parks coming into my office and giving her oral and video history for us to preserve. How amazing it was to listen to her tell the story of her arrest and the Montgomery bus boycott in her very own words. It is fitting that we name this building in honor of Mrs. Rosa Parks. She has focused her lifelong energy on teaching and learning. Generations to come will enter this building to learn. The museum is a monument to an ordinary person with the extraordinary courage to make a difference. This building, though, has far-reaching meaning beyond Montgomery in the state of Alabama. Indeed, it has national and international significance. in people's lives. Today is an historic as we recognize that the past, the present, and the future have come together as this courageous woman, this university, and the city of Montgomery join hands to celebrate change. A library stands for knowledge and the hope that change can be found through that knowledge. As Dr. Curry said at the groundbreaking ceremony, the heart of a university is its library. The idea that TSUM's heart is engraved with the name of Mrs. Rosa Parks gives us all renewed hope. May today bring us all a rekindled hope for a community known for its care and support of each other. Today brings us a reason to rejoice. I now have the unique and special honor of asking the Pathway to Freedom's youth from Detroit, Michigan, to come and prepare the way for Mrs. Parks, our inspiration. As they enter, Winfred Hawkins, the youngest child of Sandra and Robert Hawkins, a junior at Booker T. Washington Magnet School here in Montgomery, will unveil his gift of a graphite portrait of Mrs. Parks that he has entitled The Quiet Struggle.
Oh, freedom over me.
seated. Ms. Parks, it is my pleasure to give you our new University Afghan, which features the Rosa Parks Library and Museum. I'd also like to introduce one of our dear faithful partners in this project, the co-founder with Mrs. Parks of the Rosa and Raymond Institute for Self-Development, Mrs. Elaine Eason Steele.
Thank you, Dr. Martindale, Troy State University, Dr. Glenda Curry, Dr. Jack Hawkins, Mr. Ray White, and all of the Troy State University team. We are so excited to be here. I also will thank the Rosa and Raymond Parks Institute, all these beautiful students who are up here under the leadership of Ms. Anita Peak, our executive director. All the family of Mrs. Rosa Parks, will you please stand? Mrs. Parks' family, will you please stand? You look wonderful. That looks like a third of the auditorium. That's all right. That's beautiful. The women of the movement who you have heard from, but those on stage only represent a few of all of the women. Women such as, but not limited to, the Honorable Irma Henderson, my mother, Mrs. B.W. Eason, my daughter, Miss Manifa Steele Dennison, Miss Lois Harris, Miss Shirley Kinsey, Miss Belva Davis, Dr. Grace Boggs, Attorney Alice Jennings, Miss Lila Cabell. With special thanks to Judge Damon J. Keith, who asked Al Todman to fly Mrs. Parks by private jet to Montgomery. All our private security, led by Cassandra Washington of Washington, D.C. Police Department, Mr. Stanley Henderson, Los Angeles, California, Mr. Greg Franks, Los Angeles, California, Mr. Fred Burton, Detroit, Michigan, all of Montgomery's finest police department under the leadership of Chief John Wilson. But our particular team was led by Major Larry Olmsted and Deputy Marshal Art Baylor. The media in Detroit, in Montgomery, and the national coverage that we have received. A few others that have just been with us over the years, Mr. Curtis Dean, Dr. Robert Leland of her medical team, Attorney Gregory Reed. I have known Mrs. Parks for 38 years of the 45 years we celebrate today. All of you have eloquently stated the history of the mother of the modern civil rights movement. But there is more to the story. Not only did Dr. Vernon Jarrett and Dr. Douglas Brinkley share with you earlier today about our future, the youth of the Rosa and Raymond Parks Institute for Self-Development and Larry Long and the youth of rural Alabama have shared present history and our future goals. The library and museum will show you that her legacy is continuing and expanding with Pathways to Freedom and the computer interactive displays. While there, you will journey with the youth under the theme, Where Have We Been? Where Are We Going? And Mrs. Parks' voice will continue to lead us into freedom. Again, thank you, Troy State. Thank you, Rosa and Raymond Parks Institute. Thank you, Montgomery Improvement Association. Thank you, the families of the movement.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless all of us.
Excellent. Thank you, dear. Mr. Hawkins did this beautiful picture.
Mrs. Parks, I hope that this day, December 1st, 2000, can in some small way show you how revered you are in all our lives. Just as you have brought us all together for this historic occasion, may the influence of your life continue to hold us together in unity and purpose. In Montgomery, in our state, and in our nation, may we seek to live up to the example you embody in your special role in history. Mr. Lamar Higgins will now come forward to offer the benediction. We ask that you please remain at your seat until Mrs. Parks and the platform party have exited the stage. Then please join us for a reception in the Gold Room of Whitley Hall, the building directly adjacent to the theater. And we thank you so much for sharing this occasion with us.
Would you please stand for the prayer? Let us pray. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet come to a place for which our Father sighed. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, out of the gloomy past, till now, December the 1st, the year 2000, we stand at last. We give back to you, dear God, what you have given to us, strength, courage, and compassion. We now unite 45 years later after being divided. We build now a building not with bricks and mortar, but with blood, with tears, and with a great determination to cash in on that promissory note that down in Alabama, little black boys and little black boys won't just be able to play together, but they will be able to learn together, to read together in the Rosa L. Parks Library and Museum. Bless those who have come, bless their safe travel home, and bless the servant that you have given to us, Rosa L. Parks. Amen.